Nakas, a graduate student at North Dakota State University. I'm here to present a research proposal on conversational styles of women in leadership. And basically what I'm looking to do is take a look at the traditional styles of conversation, different styles of communication in terms of structure, content, and delivery. Analyze those basically in what traditional male-female roles are, and then specifically compare that to women leaders in the workplace. So a quick background on cultural communication styles as they apply to male and female communicators. Linear versus circular deals with the structure of a message. A linear communicator tends to present the message or structure the message in an A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 sort of fashion. It's minimal on details, but it's very clear and easy to understand and doesn't get off the point. A circular communicator, on the other hand, tends to make a subtle point around a context of narratives and stories and other details. A linear communicator is most often male, while a circular communicator is most often female. Direct and indirect deal with the content of a message. A direct communicator relies heavily on the verbal coding. The words themselves are the most important, while an indirect communicator tends to rely most heavily on the nonverbal coding and context around the words. Direct communicators tend to be male, and indirect communicators tend to be female. Finally, I'm going to look at the delivery of the message and compare attached versus detached. An attached communicator conveys a message with a lot of energy and enthusiasm as if they have a personal stake in the outcome of that message, while a detached communicator tends to convey the message in a more calm, objective manner. Attached communicators tend to be female, while detached communicators tend to be male. And what I want to look at primarily in this project is how are women in the workplace? Do they tend to become more linear, or do they remain circular? Do they tend to become more direct, or as a generalization, do women remain indirect? Do they tend to become more detached, or do they remain attached? And those are some of the questions that I want to look at. Related research tends to primarily focus on the way that women leaders in the workplace are viewed by their subordinates. And there's a lot of different research that's out there. Most notably, female subordinates tend to view female leaders favorably, but a lot of research says that male subordinates tend to be a little more critical of a female leader. That's according to De Armand's study in 2006. But in addition, some studies show that women tend to have a lot more stress at the workplace than men because of the attached levels of communication. According to Mackey et al. In 2005, a study reports that women accept greater responsibility for their stress, and they tend to be more attached to the relationships and the problems that they have at work because of their communication styles of generally being attached. Because of that, they end up being a little bit more vulnerable to some of the stress at work. I really want to look at how all of the related research sort of ties in and states whether or not these women leaders are viewed positively or negatively, and categorize it. Do women who tend to not be as indirect, as circular, as attached as some people are used to female styles of communication, do those women tend to be viewed more favorably or less favorably than the women leaders who maintain that traditional indirect, circular, attached methods of communication? So that's part of what I'm looking at. In terms of rationale, my hypothesis, I want to throw out a couple hypotheses and also state some rationale here for the project. First hypothesis is that women leaders in the workplace develop conversational styles that are typically male in order to more effectively communicate with subordinates, specifically direct, linear, and detached conversational styles. And my thought here is that the more that, again, the higher up someone gets, I think they learn different styles of communication to relate to the masses. And I think that might be why some of this occurs with female leadership. And the follow-up hypothesis to that is simply women leaders who engage in male conversation styles with subordinates are perceived as more negative than male leaders. What's the rationale behind all of that? I'm hoping that the insight from this study would provide some education for everyone, for women leaders, for male and female subordinates. and that the ultimate objective here would be to reduce gender bias and stereotypes and promote more understanding in cultural communication. Ethnocentrism is one aspect I may also address, as ethnocentrism kind of states that this idea in terms of conversational styles, that one conversational style is superior to another. And I want to promote that whether or not someone is direct or indirect or linear or circular, that there is no sense of superiority that should come with one of those. Rather, we should learn to understand the different styles of conversation, understand why people may change and adapt their styles, and learn to relate to them and understand them as opposed to negatively evaluate and criticize. The design, quite simply, I will interview participants, supervisors at a warehouse here in the Midwest. We will role play some conflict issues, how they encourage employees, how they organize and how they motivate, how they deal with discipline. The same sort of questionnaires will go to subordinates to interpret those communication skills and how do they perceive them. I will follow that up with a second step that would be an ethnography, where I would observe the interactions inside the warehouse and take a lot of notes on the communication and interaction. And then finally, the third thing was I'll code and map the data and look for significant themes. The participants would be at a local warehouse here in Illinois, and the reason for that, I think, is because right now we're dealing with an economic crisis and everybody wants to learn how to improve, so maybe there's some information here that I could share that would also help businesses and employees. But most of all, I just want to really try to reduce gender bias and stereotypes and learn to understand more. Women leaders in a general warehouse too may not be required to have a formal education. Some will and some won't, and I think targeting a particular environment, which not everyone has, high education may be of value. And so we can't just say that conversational styles are changed because of education, but conversational styles may change because of one's position at work. To wrap things up, my main hope and objective again is to just educate and understand the different ways of communicating without negative evaluation, in hopes that we can understand each other better and to see whether or not people do change and adapt based upon their work situations, and see what we can learn from that. Thank you.